Trellis.
Yep.
Welcome to CMMNJ TV. I'm Ken Wolski, Executive Director of the Coalition for Medical Marijuana, New Jersey. I'm here in the Princeton Community TV studio today with Gabel and Mitch Trellis. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
So, Carol, let's start with you. Tell us a little about yourself.
So with respect to this issue, Ken, my interest goes way back when I was 16 years old. I was actually here in Princeton with Michio Kushi and his wife Aveline, and there was a macrobiotic health movement that very few people really knew about. And my interest in alternative health methods started way back when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, I also became very involved in legislation. So I'm a political science major. I was the vice president of business development at the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. Actually did write an amendment to a home-based business bill, very familiar with home rule in our state, and really fascinated by those topics that I'm passionate about. And this one is one that I'm very passionate about, especially with regards to the medical marijuana. I think it's come at the right time. We have a brand new governor that's really supportive of it. My background lends the experience to be part of the coalition and to educate the general population and the legislators about such an important issue. I went on into insurance. Risk is really important to me. Worked with Marsha McLennan, the Private Healthcare Act exchange down in Delaware. We started the first private exchange, and then went back to my chamber roots and became the executive vice president of the Delaware State Chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of issues in Delaware as well. So it's not an isolated incident,
Right.
of the challenges and also the possibilities. More and more the states are coming on board. So I'm really excited to be here today with you and my colleague Mitch. And that's in a nutshell, that's a bit about my background.
Well, great. Thank you, Carol.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for explaining that. Mitch, how about you?
I am a former resident of Jersey for about 15 years, very interested in the cannabis space and an entrepreneur. And as the green wave has started to rise in America, I was always looking for opportunities to get back into the business. I was born and raised in Maryland, and in mid-2014, the state of Maryland passed a very progressive medical cannabis law. Specifically, it's a state with a high population level, high population densities, high education levels, and they passed a law that included chronic pain in the list of qualifying illnesses. And as someone who had been studying the space, I knew that that was going to mean a very robust market in the state of Maryland. So I reached back to my Maryland connections. I created a team, formed a group, and we applied for a dispensary, grow, and processing license in the state of Maryland. The process took longer than we thought it would. And in late 2016, the decisions were made. 15 growers were chosen. We were not one of the 15. It was a very interesting process with a lot of fallout, as most of these processes tend to be. About a month and a half later, we were informed that we had won a dispensary in our hometown of Columbia, Maryland, a very nice suburb of the DC, Baltimore metropolitan area. So upon that news, took some time. I analyzed the opportunity and the possibility, and I decided that this was something that we should pursue. While it wasn't what we had originally went out for, it was a seat at the table and an opportunity to serve patients. My partner's background is in serving patients. His family were the first people in America to teach acupuncture in 1974 in Columbia, Maryland. And since then, they have taught many of the acupuncturists across the country. They started the first accredited organization for an acupuncture degree in America called Thai Sophia. It ended up as the Maryland Institute for Health, Integrated Health. So they have a long history in serving patients, especially in things that the mainstream tends to overlook. So as this opportunity arose, my partner and myself kind of saw a similar situation from 40 years before, and fast forward to today, we opened the seventh or eighth medical cannabis dispensary in the state of Maryland. We've been open for about 4 weeks now. We're seeing about 200 patients a day, and the program in Maryland is off to an excellent start. We have about 20,000 patients on the list of qualified patients, and many more being added by the day. We have a lot more dispensaries coming online, a lot of growers coming online, and really helping a lot of people to
So
to
you have
get some relief.
20,000 patients already in New Jersey, in Maryland registered
Yes,
in
sir.
just a number of months.
About 11 months. Yes.
11 months.
Yes.
And New Jersey has 15,000 in 8 years.
This is correct. This is correct. It's
So,
amazing, isn't it? It's amazing
yeah.
what happens when you add chronic pain to the list of qualifying illnesses.
Yeah, chronic pain was originally a qualifying condition in New Jersey, but it was taken out, and right now chronic pain only qualifies in the cases of cancer and HIV/AIDS in New Jersey. So it's been very restrictive. It's one of the things that's been holding the program back.
Agreed.
And we're looking forward to expanding the program here in New Jersey. But was it a very expensive proposition to get a dispensary started?
As you can imagine, yes.
Yeah, that's what they say on the East Coast. It really is quite different than starting one on the West Coast.
Those days of starting one with $6,000 and a pound of medicine are over. And those stories are, they're all out there in California and Colorado. The business has become more mature. It has become grown very quickly, and it has, as you know, attracted a lot of very smart people. I do think that one thing that has occurred is, as smart people have come, we don't want to lose our focus on the patient. This is about helping people and about giving people access to something that they've been told for a long time they don't have access to, and it's very freeing for them when they finally realize that it's okay to use this medicine to benefit themselves.
Now, was there any effort in Maryland to increase diversity in the ownership of the medicinal marijuana program?
It's a very big
dispensaries?
issue.
Because we're looking at legalization here in New Jersey, and we want to see the real big. To me, the big issue is how legalization is going to work out, how it's going to play out. Is it going to be fair to women?
Right.
Is it going to be fair to minorities? Is it going to be fair to inner city residents? What was the process like in Maryland? How did it work there?
We could spend an entire show on this particular topic. In a nutshell, the original application had some requirements about racial and geographic diversity. Another iteration took those requirements out. In the end, some decisions were made with racial diversity included in the with geographic diversity included in the decision-making process, but not racial diversity. As such, there were some decision makers in the state of Maryland who were not happy with the process. So that has been an ongoing conversation since mid-2016, so probably going on, close to 2 years now, how to cure whatever it is that went wrong in that process. I can't really speak on it because, those are big discussions, but the Maryland Congressional Black Caucus is trying very hard to negotiate for more grow licenses. Their big concern, and this happens in every state that legalizes, the barriers to entry for a grow are higher than the barriers to entry for a dispensary, meaning money-wise and knowledge-wise. And there tends to be not as much of a lack of racial diversity in the dispensary business, but in the grow, because it requires so much capital and so on and so forth, that tends to be, historically in America, middle-aged white males. So that tends to be the people that have the resources to be able to put themselves in the position to win these very serious licenses, which these states, to their credit, they are putting a lot of responsibility in a few number of people's hands. And if you take race out of it, it does make sense. A lot of these people have a lot of long histories of running successful businesses. So from that point of view, you can understand why in a blind type of situation, these people would continuously win over and over again, right? But that being said, the racial implications that have come from the war on drugs for so long are so massive that there needs to be something done to address, those scars, because they're so deep that if we don't address them now, we're going to look back in 50 years and it's just going to be a continuation of the same stuff.
War on drugs has been devastating our society for decades.
Specifically minorities, specifically, people that have less of the opportunity to then turn around and benefit from this. And I do think that is an important part of this entire movement. is to try to lift up the people that have been most affected and the communities that have been most affected. You know, my partner, he goes to West Baltimore every day. He stands in front of the CVS that they burnt down during the Freddie Gray riots. That's where his office is. It's next door to that. And he sees people that get arrested for a joint, and it ruins their lives.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
and it's a very important issue to him and to us and to Remedy, and it's really important to us. We want to be a
Not to
part of
mention
fixing it.
families, you know, in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, very high opioid usage, and families are really ruined by it. You know, and if this is part of the solution, it'd be great to explore it.
Right. Yeah, you know, people worry about the effect of marijuana on the children, but they fail to realize the effect of, you know, arresting, incarcerating the parents of the children. You know, and these children are left without the love and the guidance and support of parents and very disadvantaged situation. And some of these inner cities, really, like Trenton, where I live, is like a war zone. It's you know,
Worked
it's
there
like
many years.
what the kids learn is how to live in a war zone.
The scary part is that in Trenton, I don't want to use the wrong analogy, but Trenton looks like Disney World compared to Baltimore. You know what I mean? It's like Baltimore is ground zero in this country for the opioid. You know what I mean?
It's bigger and more
it's
intense.
bigger and it's more intense, and it's frightening. And you know, you go there and you think to yourself, like, there's no hope here. How do we give a place like this hope? And that to me is a good place to start.
Yeah. So, Carol, what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles to reforming marijuana laws in New Jersey and elsewhere?
Well, certainly home rule. We found that with home-based businesses. So if you go into all the municipalities, the state has so many municipalities. So if you just start with the demographics and the geography of the state in general, that's one of the first challenges, to get everybody in a uniform decision, which never happens.
Yeah, it never happens
Never.
in New Jersey. Over 500 municipalities in New Jersey.
No. Yeah, over, for sure. And there are those municipalities that have strict rules on alcohol. You know,
Right.
you look at Ocean Grove, or you look at Belmar.
Haddonfield.
You know, these are communities that, you know, forever it's been, you know, they're very hard on drugs, hard on any kind of stimulants.
It's a part of their brand.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
You know
It
what I mean?
is, and that's to be respected. You know, I mean, you know, I think everybody is really within that respect line. So that's one of the limitations and one of the roadblocks, but there are several, as you know, with any legalization of anything.
To jump in real quick, one thing that we like to do is, you know, Carol mentioned alcohol. We don't really consider legalized marijuana to be similar to alcohol. We consider legalized marijuana to be similar to the vitamin shop, to a supplement model, because we come from a place where we believe that the benefits of cannabis so dramatically outweigh the negatives that alcohol has a lot of negatives associated with it, right? Alcohol costs in the average year, alcohol causes about 88,000 deaths a year in America. It's responsible for about $250 billion of money that's spent, you know, on excessive alcohol consumption in the United States. These are massive numbers, right? So we don't think about legalized marijuana as alcohol. We think of it as the vitamin shop, as a way for the average person, to lower the barriers for the average person to supplement themselves, right? Because it's a powerful, powerful medicine.
Right. And, you know, many people say that, well, you know, why would you legalize another drug in New Jersey? You know, but really it's a safer alternative
It sure
to the
is.
drugs that are legal, and it has so many medical benefits. But isn't the problem, perhaps the provincialism associated with the home rule, isn't that really a reflection of the stigma that the government has been imposed on marijuana for decades? I mean, they consider it a Schedule I drug. They consider it as there's no more dangerous drug in America than marijuana, according to the federal government. And even in New Jersey, and I'm not sure how it is in Maryland, but New Jersey also considers marijuana a Schedule I drug with no accepted medical uses, despite the fact that they have a program that accepts medical uses.
Exactly. There's dispensaries in place.
Right. And we're going to be expanding the medical uses. So one of the things that we're urging Governor Murphy to do now is to deschedule marijuana, rather than just reschedule it. Just take it out of the Controlled Substances Act altogether and make it more like a vitamin, make it more like a supplement, make it more in tune with holistic medical practices.
When you put the list of Schedule I drugs on a board, it's one of those cases of an SAT question. Which one of these things doesn't belong?
Right.
Right?
Or
'Cause
Sesame Street,
exactly.
right?
It's heroin and it's LSD. You know, cocaine.
Right.
I believe cocaine is a Schedule 2.
Schedule 2, sure.
Right, so they're actually,
Methamphetamine.
so
That's
they're
just-
saying that
Schedule 2.
literally marijuana is more dangerous and more detrimental to
Right.
society than meth,
A higher potential for abuse than
which is
methamphetamine.
that's a
Right.
scary thought.
Right.
I know, and they've been insisting on that since 1970 successfully, and they've successfully rebuffed every challenge, since 1972, the first challenge.
And because of that classification, there are those that are incarcerated unnecessarily,
Oh,
for,
yeah,
for
absolutely.
having a controlled substance.
Right, right. We have a legal challenge right now to marijuana's classification schedule as a Schedule 1 drug, and it was started by Stephen Kadonsky, an inmate at New Jersey State Prison at Trenton, and that was successful. The appeals court ruled that Mr. Kadonsky was correct, and that the New Jersey really should revisit its scheduling, its scheduling of marijuana. Now, during the Christie administration vowed to appeal that to the New Jersey Supreme Court, but I don't think we're going to see the Murphy administration do that.
They're not going to pick up that mantle and carry it.
No,
There's some
I
good
don't
news
think so.
today.
No. And of course, one of the things that back in the 70s, the marijuana was associated with criminality, insanity, and death. This was how they justified all the felonies that were associated with marijuana possession. And then, of course, in the 60s and in the 70s, marijuana explosion of use among college students, said, well, no, it's probably more likely to be associated with peace, love, and happiness. So,
Right.
so the federal government, as the states started to decriminalize marijuana in various states, they said, well, we're still going to keep it illegal because it might lead to more dangerous drugs. That was
Gateway.
the gateway theory. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as far as it being a gateway drug, I mean, I think the current explosion of opioid usage really goes to the prescription drugs. If you're going to really point a finger at a gateway to usage of opioids, I think it starts with painkillers. At least that's what I learned in Wilmington. Families that were affected could no longer afford to buy the prescriptions and ended up going to a, less costly pain relief. So that I don't really agree with that.
Right.
I also think that it's been disproven over and over again, marijuana as a gateway drug. It actually, what they found is that the best way to stop people from moving on to the next drugs is to regulate what they consider to be a gateway drug. So it's the average person is more likely to have a drug dealer, an illegal drug dealer, try to upsell them to the next drug in a non-regulated scenario versus a regulated cannabis dispensary where we know exactly what's going on and people have rules and expectations. And in that scenario, this is the thing also. We're not talking in esoterics anymore. It's not one state. It's not two states. There are multiple states in this country where they have legalized recreational and medical marijuana, and the sky has not fallen. The teens use less marijuana in the state of Colorado today than they did before marijuana was legalized. So if people want to talk about gateway drugs, we now have firm numbers. I used to work at a hedge fund, and at hedge funds, nobody cares about your opinion. Show me the data.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, the data is there. Everyone
of
just
course,
wants, a lot of people want to ignore it.
Well, the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Organization, they manipulate the data. So, and opponents of marijuana reform do tend to manipulate the data. They may say that, there's more fatal accidents that are associated with marijuana use in Colorado. Now, some of that is simply data manipulation because they say, well, more people are using marijuana. They're checking the metabolites in fatal accidents, and they're seeing more metabolites for cannabis. But there's no real indication that it was the intoxication that caused the fatal accident. Data can be your friend or your enemy depending on who's using it.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, correct.
We always say at the hedge fund, you can make a model sing any song you want. Always.
Yeah.
Or torture the data long enough and it will confess.
Exactly right. I
That's
like
true.
that. I like that one even better.
We'll have to borrow that, Ken.
I like that one.
But how about what are some of the dangers associated with it? Overdoses, for example, is that a realistic? In what sense is that any kind of realistic concern, Carol?
I would probably defer to you, having the dispensary and also your experiences. I would think you'd be in a better place to answer that.
We have seen patients who have over-ingested cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually find it encouraging that that patient is in the next day telling us how they over-ingested cannabis, as opposed to a person who over-ingests heroin has a 65% chance of being dead the next day.
Right.
And a person who over-ingested methamphetamines is now up for the next 96 hours, probably looking, to do whatever they can to get more money to get more methamphetamine. So is it possible to over-ingest cannabis? Sure. It's impossible to over-ingest everything: pizza, drugs, alcohol. I think that what's important is when you over-ingest cannabis, if you wait long enough, that will go away and you'll be fine. And the real answer is I probably shouldn't use that particular thing to that degree the next time, but you're alive and healthy and able to make that decision. I think that's the most important.
Yeah, contrast that with the tragedies of fatal alcohol overindulgence in college campuses.
Right. Well, if you think about it also, the regulation will actually help with that, because if you're getting something and you're unaware of the actual substance and what you're getting, it's no different than a bottle of alcohol that doesn't have
Very
a
important.
label.
Yeah.
If it's 80 proof versus 20 proof, there's going to be different side
Back
effects,
to the
right?
regulations,
You
right?
don't
So-
know what you're getting,
Right.
Exactly.
and then who you're getting it from.
Right.
You may be very well be getting it from people who have methamphetamine to give you or to sell you.
Exactly.
I think it's much wiser to have it
In Maryland,
regulated.
in Maryland, all of the medicine is tested and tested again, and it has to, it's tracked from seed to sale, so you know where it's been, what kind of nutrients are in it. The testing has been done to it. And one of the things that many patients who were medicating with black market cannabis, one of the reasons is that one of their main things that they're really happy about coming to the dispensary is that they know where their product's coming from, they know what's in it, they know the strength of it, they
You
know
label the
effects,
cannabinoid
of course,
content
of
and
course.
the terpenes
And then we have
and all.
very, very well-educated patient advisors who lead our patients, down the path of the journey of trying something new and figuring out, because it's an amazing plant. There's so much to it. It's so deep and intense, and you need people to lead you on this journey as to which part of it is best for me. Just like when you go into the vitamin shop, it's overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't know the names, and the names are very foreign, and it becomes overwhelming. So
Sure.
it's a powerful place, the dispensary, but it's also an overwhelming place for the average person who hasn't been there that.
And
that
you
much.
can overdose on vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin E,
sure.
any oil, so, and that's all legal.
Mhm. What are your plans? How are you planning to go about promoting legalization of marijuana?
Step by step, addressing it holistically, Ken. I think taking a 360-degree viewpoint of it, not just approaching the legislators, but approaching health practitioners, the physicians. I was just talking to a physician who was vehemently opposed to medical marijuana 5 years ago, ended up sadly getting Parkinson's, and now is an avid user and a big advocate of it. So I think it's just education, education, education. With real estate, it's location, location, location. But with us, it's really education, because we're talking about myths that majority of the people believe, so it's, going back to the 1960s, and this is a new improved version. It's much, it's much more diverse, and it requires much more education. So it isn't just with legislators, it's with churches, it's with, everyone to understand, moms and dads that think, oh my gosh, my teenager is going to get hooked on marijuana, and then he's or she is going to be a heroin user. It's a general-based education. And then I think, really going and looking at the legislation itself and being a real advocate of it, having lobbied way back when and looking at home rule, I think that we have our work to do, in truly educating, not, standing on a pulpit.
Right.
Right.
And, our organization is advocating that the Board of Medical Examiners require education for physicians
Of course.
as a part of their
Continuing,
licensure, continuation of their licensure on the endocannabinoid system. You know, I mean, here is
Oh, it's fascinating.
here is a whole
yeah.
new science.
It
You know,
is.
that really was only discovered since the 1990s or late 80s, and it affects so many different systems in the body and diseases and medical conditions and symptoms that every doctor really should know about it in New Jersey, at least. So that's
Yeah,
one
I
of the things that
agree.
we're promoting. You know, it's harder and it's labor intensive, and to go out to the community to educate about medical marijuana. We would hope that the Department of Health would have taken a role in that, but in the 8 years that the program's been running, the Department of Health has practically said nothing about it. They do have a web page, but you know, but they don't do any. They don't go into the community. They don't advocate. They don't tell
That's
people.
we consider that our job, right?
Yeah.
As a dispensary, as the people that touch the patient, as the people that are the last line interacting with the patient. We think if we don't pick up that mantle and carry it ourselves, nobody's going to. So something that we do often is get out into the community. And you know, my partner and myself and my entire management team was born and raised in Columbia, Maryland. So that community means something especially, you know, extra to us. But we see, you know, Remedy's goal is to educate, and through education, these people will want to use this product because it's an amazing, amazing product.
Right.
It's an amazing plant.
That's the name of your
Remedy.
organization. Remedy.
My organization is Remedy.
Very
So,
nice.
Thank you.
You know, we've been doing that for years. The mission of the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey is to educate the public about the benefits of medical marijuana. So, and you know, we've been going out into the community since 2003, but it's a big community.
It is a big
There's 9 million
It's
people out
amazing.
there.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
it is.
Really is.
I've had the pleasure of going out to Oregon. My daughter lives there, and she's a holistic health practitioner, and you know, visiting the dispensaries. And I had the privilege of visiting Maryland, and it's just quite an experience. You know, and for those of your listening audience that have never been to one, you know, I would highly encourage them to do so. I mean, and Mitch is right within itself. It's like a school of sorts. You know, there's everything you could possibly want to know. Everybody there is so educated and so, you know, willing to share.
Right. Problem is that you can't walk into a dispensary in New Jersey unless you have an ID card. You know, so that the education is great at the dispensaries. Don't get me wrong, but it's only for qualified patients who are in there, not even for
In New Jersey, right.
relatives of you know, potential patients who may be too sick to go to get the education.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, you know, because it's a really great experience. I think another myth, like, ooh, it's, you know, like a voodoo place, or, you know, and everybody has this perception, right?
I actually read a study yesterday. It was fascinating. So my partner, he often talks about our dispensary as a third place, as a place that people actually enjoy being outside of the home and the workplace. And I read a study yesterday. It was amazing. I sent it to him immediately. It said that they believe, the doctors and scientists believe, that being around people actually is beneficial in curing chronic pain. They think that loneliness is part of the cause of this wave of chronic pain that's crossed America in the last 20 years. And it actually emotionally ties back to loneliness. And I found it fascinating that what my partner was tapping into was this subconscious feeling of people come into our dispensary and they literally like being there.
Right.
They literally, and everyone in there is happy because this thing that's been held down for so long is being freed. And it's so powerful that everybody almost becomes this positive.
Well, you get also get
aura,
to,
sure.
and you hear, it's hopeful because you get to hear another person talk about their pain or what's ever wrong with them.
I was on 40 pills a
gives
month
you
ago, and now
hope.
I'm down to 10. I mean, that's a powerful statement right there.
It is.
I will tell you, when I was in Oregon, met many Uber drivers that told me about why they were out there. And many of them moved cross state lines because a loved one had a very bad illness. And since they had been in Oregon and were taking the medical marijuana, that their lives were so much more improved. So it's encouraging to those that don't have hope. So what, you know, just expanding on what Mitch said, that contributes to happiness, and it's much better than being lonely and feeling like there are no answers.
I was struck specifically in this study by the words chronic pain, right? Because everybody out there is looking for the cure to chronic pain. And one of these the states with chronic pain, a lot of people tend to use the cannabis for chronic pain, right?
Yeah, it's the most common
It's the
reason
most common thing,
people
but it's
use
almost like, what if the answer is not just cannabis, but just being around each other more,
Right.
right?
Right.
Cannabis and Starbucks. What if that was the answer? It might actually it would start to make a lot of sense, right? So I was just fascinated by that.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of unfortunate in New Jersey that people cannot medicate inside the dispensaries. You know, that I think that marijuana is a very social thing, and people call it more social use rather than recreational use, which I think recreational is probably a misnomer for it. Probably adult use or social use or religious use or medical use. Are more appropriate terms to use.
It's almost social acceptance, because the interesting thing is, if you go to a place like Amsterdam, right? This is a non-factor. And in Amsterdam, it's so social that there are, cannabis coffee shops where the doors are open and people are ingesting cannabis in a social atmosphere, and people are walking by, and it's a non-factor.
Yeah.
The same way that we walk down, the street in Morristown and there's 13 bars and every one of them is packed and people are having a great time. It's the exact same situation.
Right.
And teen use in Amsterdam is significantly less than teen use in the United States.
Significantly less. You're exactly right.
So, yeah, there is a lot to that. I think that people want to help one another. That's the whole basis of support systems. To establish a support system where patients can come and talk about their illness and talk about what makes them feel better, and marijuana can be an important part of that.
Yeah, I loved what you talked about, the cannabinoids and that whole system, and it being an adaptogen, a whole science that's just there to explore. It's just fascinating.
Right. We think that the future of therapeutics depends heavily on understanding this system, according to Jehan Marcoux, one of the leading scientists of...
My partner loves Jehan.
Oh, yeah. Jehan's great. We had him here on the TV show some time ago. So, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Ken, for having us. And hopefully you'll come visit in Maryland.
We would love to have you. We would love to have you.
Oh, that's great. I would love to visit down there.
Yes, the invitation is always available.
Well, thank you, Mitch, and thank you, Carol, for coming here to CMMNJ TV and talking about your experiences.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Ken.
your time. Thank you.
Great. Is there, I don't know if we have any more time.